So, welcome to Let's Talk Evolution, the podcast where real life experience meets the complexities of today's tech industry. Each episode, we dive into specific topics with thought leaders who know the systems, the struggles, and the nuances that drive the industry. The series is all about unpacking the inner workings of tech and learning from the people who understand it best. So, today I'm delighted to be joined by Damien Kopp. So, with 25 years' experience across Europe, North America, and Asia, Damien bridges two worlds as an advisor on government agencies, banks, and Fortune 500s, and as an operator leading innovation and AI initiatives inside startups and large corporates throughout the last 25 years. So, Damien, be fantastic to get a bit of an introduction on yourself, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Jake. Great to be here. So quickly, a bit more about me, I guess. Start with that. As you mentioned, I've been working across 3 continents over the past 25 years or so, both as an advisor and an operator within companies, and I've been, cutting across different industries, different sectors, but always working mainly around data and bringing intelligence and monetization of data within companies of all sizes.
Okay, fantastic. So I think obviously the buzzword at the moment is AI. And in today's podcast, we kind of wanted to title it Beyond Adoption. The next phase of AI readiness. And I think we got kind of 4 key questions, but we'll talk through a few different topics surrounding those questions as well. And feel free to share anything else aside of the kind of questions that we've identified. So firstly, many organizations claim AI adoption, but scaling AI sustainably is proving quite difficult, I think, for a lot of the clients that we deal with and a lot of the companies that we hear about. From your perspective, what distinguishes companies that have turned AI from experiments into a repeatable value-creating capability?
Yeah, I think, to quote an MIT research paper, I think that was released a few weeks ago, and claiming 95% of the enterprise AI initiatives don't scale or technically are seen as a failure. I think it comes down to what was the original objective, right? And I must say, for a very new technology like generative AI coming into enterprises, I think there was genuine interest to understand the technology first and what it could do. And I don't think it's completely fair to say, well, 95% have failed, so it's a complete waste of time and money. Because a lot of companies I worked with, they were fairly deliberate to understand what the tech could do, understand how to harness it, understand how to implement it, understand its limitations as well. And because it's been such a fast-moving train, the constant learning that it took a lot of teams to get a good understanding, and the tools being developed at the same time, the frameworks being developed at the same time. So it comes down to what was the expectation. And I think that's the problem. I think the goalposts have changed and have moved over time, because originally it was like, what does it do? How does it work? Can we implement it, and how? From, well, I don't get money for my buck, which is a very different kind of situation to say, well, what was the goal? Was it to learn? Was it to build capabilities? Or was it to reduce cost, to create new revenue streams or differentiation, right? And I think for the ones who are seen as successful today, is they had a measure of success in the first place. Why are we doing this? What are we investing in, and why and how? And for the ones that are seen as successful in all this research, is realistically, they went beyond building capabilities. They went beyond the learning. They went into, I need to be more efficient at doing X, Y, and Z. I need to be more efficient at serving my customers through voice channels or call centers. I need to be more efficient at turning my orders around. I need to be more efficient at opening up a new market, localizing marketing campaigns or content. Or I need to create new revenue streams, and this is usually a bit harder. So I need to be better at expanding my business, again, which could be new products, new market, new geography, new channels, new partners, right? And that comes down to that, I think, original strategy, which that hasn't been always been connected. So what is the business trying to do as a whole, and how data, digital, AI can help accelerate that journey to help, or even be more ambitious in the strategy itself, in the goal to reach. So I think that's the first aspect of what defines success and failure from that sense. What was the original objective, and once you've picked one, I guess, once you've picked an objective, again, say I want to expand to new market. Well, understand what's involved in expanding to new markets. Usually localization, compliance, new partners, new distribution channels, and where are the frictions? So then you drill down into what is taking me time today, what are the choke points, and how, or can I use now technology in general to help remove these choke points? Can I do things differently? I'm a big believer that, if you just use AI to do what you do faster, you're going to get, I guess, marginal gains out of it. But if you use AI to do things differently, you can get exponential gains, right? And that takes obviously more effort, and you need more support, and you need more changes across the organization. But that can pay off big time compared to bringing a bit of automation here and there, right? Which can be useful, but doesn't massively change the outcomes.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I think a lot of the people that we've engaged with who perhaps haven't seen the required returns on some of their AI initiatives have been confused about what the initial objective was. And I think that's kind of,
or it changed. It may have changed over time. Yeah, exactly.
So I guess many companies still confuse data accumulation with data readiness. I think it's probably something that recruitment companies, for example, have always been quite prevalent on in the past. Is how much information can we accumulate? What shifts in mindset and governance are required to turn fragmented data assets into decision-ready intelligence in most of those kind of organizations that you've come across?
Yeah, I see. 25 years ago, when I started building data warehouses and then data lakes, and there was a sense that you had to capture everything. There was actually a philosophy that was generally capture everything you can, because that will be useful later on. And I think that is interesting. First of all, there is actually far more data to capture now, because the digital trail that your customers leave, your employees leave, your stakeholders leaves across the different apps they use has proliferated quite dramatically. So the volume of data you can capture in the first place has grown significantly. And second, which is actually a problem in a way, is storage is incredibly cheap. So it looks that it's the right thing to do, right? But so here's the provocation, which is not if, but when you're going to be hacked. Do you want to have captured indeed everything, including, again, the customer data and some aspects that will expose you to, obviously, to be on the front page or to be sued? And that's the data maximization kind of strategy. With, again, as long as it comes with the right the right security, the right governance, and you've put the money behind it to secure that as indeed what it's supposed to be, a strategic asset. But if you've said, I captured everything, you didn't treat it as an asset, it becomes your biggest liability, because you will be hacked. And that moment, everything you've captured, can be stolen, right? People cannot steal what you haven't captured and when you're not storing. So there is another philosophy that comes in now, which is, well, maybe I should now be a bit more diligent and I think intentional about what I want to capture, because if I get hacked, when I get hacked, I would want to have minimized that footprint. So that's the data minimization strategy where you're like, well, maybe I should actually pay a bit more attention. Yes, storage is cheap, but the problem is governance and security, which comes down also to, I guess an important point that I think is to be made here is about data encryption specifically, and post quantum readiness. And post quantum readiness means I know that even if I'm hacked today, potentially no one will say anything. Only me will know that. Only I will know that. But when a quantum encryption is ready, or post-quantum decryption is ready, or these hacking tools are ready, my data is exposed. And so I think what we need to be careful about, there's a lot of activity right now, or potentially data being stolen without people saying it, because they are preparing, or hackers are preparing to have leverage later on when the technology is ready, and they'll be able to indeed, hack the encrypted data sets. So I think this is not to be ignored. I think there's general awareness that quantum may be ready. It used to be, 15 years ahead. Now it could be 10. Now some people say it could be 5. And when it's going to be ready, most companies are not ready for that as well. So not just the data capture and the volume and what you capture, but how you store it, how you govern it, and how you secure it is super important, including the post-quantum readiness.
Absolutely. And when you say, just to define post-quantum readiness, what specifically do you mean by that?
Is when quantum computing will be ready, hacking most encryption keys as they are today will be extremely easy. And so unless you have encrypted for that post-quantum ready, which means effectively a longer key, a more complex key, that can defeat a quantum computer, then you're only safe in that regard, right? But again, most companies have not really started the initiative, and it's a big product. It's like the move to the year 2000, where people were freaking out because of the 2 zeros, but this one had a hard date, right? Quantum doesn't have a hard date. You just know it's coming. You don't know exactly when, but we are thinking the timeline is probably shrinking. So being ready for that, I think, is going to be extremely important for many organizations.
Absolutely. Adopting AI is as much human systems as technical ones. How can leaders build trust, clarity, and confidence among teams when AI introduces both promise and, I guess, uncertainty?
Yeah, I think probably the major challenge to AI adoption is, I mean, the noise we hear from the market about, AI effectively eliminating 90% of the jobs on the planet, or whatever you heard before, just like me, from the media or prominent figures who have, let's be clear, most people saying that have an agenda, which is to grow their own AI business. So I think have to be a bit careful about what people say. A job, for the most part, is not just executing a list of tasks, right? And so AI is good at automating a number of tasks, but a job is not just that. So the fear on AI is a threat to my lifestyle, my job, my environment is I don't think is justified at the scale that people are talking about today. And that's important, I think, for leaders to have that understanding so they can communicate to their teams and their leadership teams as well. So the message is clear about how AI is meant to be used. What we've seen a lot of companies laying off today, and they claim it's because of AI, but it is because of AI, because they've overinvested in technology and tools, and now they have to obviously improve their bottom line, and they do it by doing it the easy way, which is laying off people because it's less cost. So it's because of AI, but it's not thanks to AI, as a value add into the business that has indeed replaced actually jobs, right? So for most companies, that's what's happening, including the big tech in the sector. So that's the first part, is on the fear that is generated by some, I guess, some of the media, as well as some prominent features in the field, figures in the field. And second is obviously the trust. As you're using the technology, you also realize it's not perfect, and it shouldn't be sold as something perfect that works, every time. So I think the problem we have is when the technology is used today, and the use cases that are being powered by generative AI specifically are potentially not always the best use of the technology. So I'll give you an example. If it's you're a CFO, or you're a financial analyst and you're looking at numbers, you probably don't want a level of variability in your numbers. You want something certain. It's math, so it's either 1 or 0, right? So the type of AI, you can do forecasting, you can forecast numbers with a lot of different AI models, just not Gen AI. Gen AI is not designed for that. It's designed to generate, to expand information, so to make things up, because by design, that's what it does. It compresses information and expands information. And by doing that, just like you'd compress a picture or extrapolate a picture, you create new data. And by creating new data, you may create sometimes some random values, right? And that's what it does. So again, some use cases are wrong, and that has affected confidence in the technology, because as you apply it to the wrong use case, you're like, well, it doesn't work. Well, yeah, it doesn't work for what you're trying to do. You're losing confidence in the tech because it's not the right tech to solve the problem you have at hand, right? Um, and I think that's quite important. And the last thing I'll mention maybe is that I think is quite important is how experienced are designed around the use of generative AI, especially through chatbot, where they are designed as companions. They're humanized as a coach, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a therapist. And by humanizing them, humanizing the technology behind it, that is creating a false sense of bond, of emotional attachment that could create manipulative behavior. And to be clear, the tech is not manipulative per se. Is a mirror of what you tell it. It's like you're talking to yourself in a mirror and you feel like, well, look what he said. Well, yeah, that's you. And the resonance is effectively what the language models has learned from all these human conversations and using that back with you, right? But again, it's been designed by humans for humans, using human generated data for the most part. So it's not that intelligent. It's just manipulative, just like any human being is manipulative in the conditions that you've set for the conversation. So long story short, when you design a user experience around a bot and you're trying to humanize it, you're creating a false expectation, I think, with users who are lowering their guard, don't realize they're still talking to a machine, and potentially start believing what's coming out is actually real. And that's, I think, really dangerous. And I think that's for us technologists and also business leaders to actually set the clear boundaries on how they want this technology to be used, to avoid this kind of situation that has led, unfortunately, to dramatic events, including suicides,
Yeah.
which is terrible.
Yeah, absolutely. And just picking up on one of the things that you talked about, the layoffs that have been well publicized, even prior to the mass recognition and public utilization of AI and generative AI tools. Like the big tech firms kind of started the layoffs 2022, and it kind of percolated through the rest of the market.
Yeah.
I guess AI is being blamed or talked about as one of the catalysts for that, and I agree it's often a reason, but maybe not in the way that people understand it. From what I've heard and the people that I've talked about, you have two kind of extremes of how people perceive AI's impact on the job market or mass adoption of AI on the job market. And one extreme would be, oh no, it's just a tool like Excel. So when we started using Excel for number crunching, presenting data, etc., that's one way of doing it. and one way of seeing the impact on AI or of AI on jobs. And then the other extreme is when you listen to people like Mo Gaudat and a couple of other prominent thought leaders, is Armageddon, and we're going to see huge unemployment across multiple industry sectors, and we're going to see almost societal dystopia for the next 10 years while we try and work out how AI is going to make a meaningful positive contribution. If we consider those as two kind of opposite ends of the spectrum, where would you sit on that line?
Yeah, I want to think that so one is about technology readiness, which means is the tech really ready to fulfill the promise that is being sold to us right now, which is full autonomous systems and decision making and all that stuff. And that's one side of the equation. The other side is adoption, which part of it is a function of technological readiness, but the other part is obviously organizational readiness, people's readiness, and to embrace that. And in the enterprise context, there's a lot at stake to infuse a new technology into the different parts of an organization. And so I feel that infusion takes time because an enterprise, unlike a consumer who can change behaviors and it's a unit of adoption, infusing AI into an existing process or even revamping the process involving multiple people, stakeholders, but also compliance and financials and traceability and auditability and cybersecurity adds a lot of layers to kind of revalidate all that, right? And that has been built over years of experience or even decades of experience. So you could argue, well, rip it off and start from scratch, but that's not that easy, right? And some companies, again, will have, most companies, they have their own intellectual properties. They have their own way of doing things that have worked well for them so far. So they're also afraid maybe that disrupting it too much will actually diminish their differentiation, will affect that. So I think to your question, I don't know. I wish I had a better answer, but I look at the different dimension that will be at play, tech readiness, adoption and infusion or speed of infusion into enterprises, which again has to rely on other things that again are not really talked about, which is in the general landscape of the big tech players, there is a lot of geopolitical power play that is also to take into consideration. And in the past, few decades, benefiting from the globalization era, tech has been mostly borderless and seen as politically neutral. It's been used as leverage in some instances, but mainly you could start a company in the US and scale across Asia in a snap, right? And that has happened many times. Now, the current situation that is seeing fragmentation, not just between the West and the East, but within the West as well, creating a new multipolar world, is also creating new center of gravity and new barriers for global companies to become or companies to become global. And I think that is fragmenting the digital landscape. That, in a sense, has benefits because it can benefit local players to have an opportunity to fight back a global competition because they'll have their own territory they can expand before being either acquired or killed by global players. So this is, I think, good to favor local competition, local innovation. But obviously, it will come potentially detrimental to the speed of adoption because with different players trying to impose likely different standards, different tech, different and with different constraints on the regulatory side, there will be, I think, it will be a lot more complex to navigate for companies that may not be able to adopt a single tech stack across all their different sites, different countries, different jurisdictions. Because to be able to not only comply, but limit their exposure and risk to geopolitical externalities, again, could be export controls, it could be extraterritorial rights, it could be currencies, it could be uh, um, all kinds of legislation that can affect them. That is creating a fragmentation overall. And I think that creating complexity in that sense that may slow down some of the technological progress, but also, again, give countries and companies a bit more autonomy and control over their tech stack, which today you could argue are fully dependent on a handful of players, which is not great either from a resilience perspective. So I think that landscape is also evolving pretty quickly, and that needs to be mapped out, understanding um, dependencies, understanding challenges that um, are uh, coming ahead in this geopolitical landscape. I think that's quite important to map them out.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's fascinating. And I guess just as one final point, you talked about the kind of behavioral change component versus the capability of the technology. And I think perhaps from the people that I've spoken to, and you kind of indicated similar earlier in the conversation, perhaps a lot of people are underestimating the full potential of the technology, but overestimating the speed of behavioral change. And that might be a common opinion held by a few of the people that we've spoken to, a couple who we've had on this podcast. All of that said, people are still fairly worried at the moment, and understandably so. Whether it be about jobs, whether it be about societal impact, the geopolitical situation, and not so about politics, but AI's impact in kind of exaggerating the risks associated with those geopolitical uncertainties. And if there's one piece of advice you'd give to anyone listening who is in that situation, and is concerned about it, is there any one particular actionable insight that you'd recommend people do, either to prepare themselves for the future, or maybe just feel a little bit more centered in a increasingly kind of polarized, disrupted period of rhetoric, specifically in regards to AI?
Yeah, look, again, I won't pretend I have all the answers here, but the way I try to look at it is, if you understand the change that's coming, you're much better equipped to handle it and almost get kind of ahead of it. And a lot of it is effectively education from the right sources, obviously, but and I know there's a lot of noise, and sometimes it's hard to get the signal from the noise. And I know there's also um, you know a, a progress that is extremely fast, so it's hard to keep track. Like even for me, who's actually doing this every day, but it's about keeping your relevance, right? Ultimately, it's about, is what I know and what I do, will it continue to be relevant in a few years from now? And I think from anyone at any point in your career and at any point in the past as well, I think anybody had to ask this question. You could argue, there used to be career that could be lifelong career doing the same job for 45 years, but it's been a while that I think that's not happening, or if it still is, it's probably very rare now. So the ability to reinvent yourself, or the ability to stay up to date, and to not see your career as I guess, a linear thing that will have an extremely predictable path. I think be able to embrace a bit of ambiguity and a bit of uncertainty, although it can be uncomfortable, I think is important to be able to handle what's coming, because things are going to continue to change and things are moving fairly fast. But instead of, I think, sitting and being scared, it's about, what can I do? What can I learn to kind of stay on top of it and get help, right? Again, easier said than done, but I think it's about questioning your current path and be able to proactively manage, I guess, your career and your next move to help you navigate this uncertainty.
Fantastic. That's very good advice, I think. So thank you very much, Damien, for offering all your insights. And I think it's some super interesting topics explored. I think, really look forward to keeping in touch and seeing how this evolution takes effect. And thank you again for joining us today.